This winter weather pattern that we've been tracking just turned a lot colder and a lot snowier. And I mean that based on the newest data that just came in. So today, I'm going to walk you through exactly what changed, why it changed, and what this means for your fall and your winter going all the way towards the beginning of spring. So let's get right into the latest information, everybody. I want to start with our Arctic Oscillation and our East Pacific Oscillation, because these two together are really the backbone of what's driving this shift. The newest runs are showing our EPO diving into a stronger negative phase than what we were looking at even just a few days ago. Remember what a negative EPO means for us. That means you get a taller, stronger ridge building up towards Alaska, and when that ridge builds up that high, it forces cold air to spill down out of Canada into the central and eastern US. So this negative EPO signal strengthening is really the first big piece of why this pattern just turned colder. Now, when you pair that with our Arctic Oscillation, which is also trending more negative as we go through the back half of this month and into next month, that tells you the cold air intrusion coming down from the pole is going to be deeper and it's going to be more frequent. So instead of just getting one or two cool shots here and there, we're looking at a pattern that wants to repeatedly tap into that colder air. And it wants to do it more often as we go through fall and especially as we get into winter. So picture this with me. You've got that ridge building way up towards Alaska. And on the back side of that ridge, you've got these frontal systems diving down through the northern plains, through the upper Midwest, and then swinging across the central and eastern US. Every time one of these fronts comes through, it's going to reinforce that colder air, and it's also going to bring chances for precipitation right along with it. So this is a pattern that doesn't just want to be cold, it wants to be stormy too. And that combination is exactly why I'm using the word snowy in today's title. Let's talk about the pressure anomaly trends, because this is where you can really see the story playing out on the map. As we finish out this month, we're generally near to just slightly below average on pressure across the central and eastern US. But as we move into next month, you can already see that below average pressure signal deepening, especially across the Ohio Valley, the Tennessee Valley, and up into the northeast. That deepening pressure trough is exactly what you want to see if you're hoping for an active stormy pattern, because low pressure is what drives storm tracks. And right now, the newest data wants to put that storm track right across the heart of the country. As we go from that period into the following month, this trend doesn't back off. It actually strengthens. We're watching that below average pressure anomaly expand and intensify across the south, the southeast, and up into the eastern seaboard. This is the kind of signal that, if it holds together, sets the stage for an active storm track that can bring everything from heavy rain events in the early part of the season to a mix of rain, snow, and ice as we get deeper into the cold season and temperatures are able to meet up with the moisture. Now here's where the new information really stands out compared to what we were tracking before. Going into the heart of winter, the newest guidance is showing this below average pressure anomaly not just holding steady, but actually strengthening even further. We're talking about one of the deeper troughs we've seen in the guidance for this time of year. And it's centered right across that same corridor from the southern plains, up through the Ohio Valley and into the northeast. When you get a trough that deep sitting in that position for an extended stretch, that's a setup that tends to produce multiple storm systems. And depending on exactly how cold the air mass is that's in place, some of these systems have a real shot at producing significant snow and ice, not just rain. Let's shift over to the precipitation side of things, because this ties directly into everything I just walked you through on pressure. For the remainder of this month, we're generally trending a little above average on precipitation across a good chunk of the south and into parts of the east. As we move into next month, that above average signal expands, and this is where our subtropical jet starts to become a bigger player. Once that subtropical jet really kicks in, it acts like a moisture conveyor belt, pulling in deep tropical moisture from the Gulf and the eastern Pacific and flinging it up and across the southern and eastern US. As we go deeper into the season, that subtropical jet signal doesn't fade. It actually strengthens right alongside that northern stream trough we've been discussing. And when you get a strong subtropical jet and a strong northern stream trough interacting with each other, that's basically the recipe book for big storm systems. You get plenty of moisture coming up from the south, and you get plenty of cold air and energy diving down from the north. And where those two air masses collide is where you get your biggest impacts, whether that's heavy rainfall, severe weather in the fall, or heavy snow and ice once we're firmly into the winter months. Now let's look at how the different models are lining up on all of this, because I always like to show you more than one source so you can see where there's agreement and where there's still some uncertainty. Starting with the CANSIPs, this model has consistently been on the broader and slightly more aggressive side when it comes to painting that below average pressure and above average precipitation across the central and eastern US. The newest CANSIPs run keeps that signal in place all the way from fall into the heart of winter, and it actually nudges it even a little further north and east compared to earlier runs, which would mean more of the northeast getting pulled into this active, stormy pattern. The European model, which has honestly been one of the more consistent performers in this whole outlook, is also trending colder and snowier compared to where it was just a couple weeks ago. The Euro is showing that same ridge out towards Alaska, that same trough digging into the central and eastern US, and it's doing it with a bit more confidence in the newest ensemble runs than what we were seeing before. When your two main long-range models start agreeing more with each other rather than diverging, that's usually a good sign that a signal like this one is becoming more reliable, even though we're still talking about a seasonal outlook and not a day-to-day forecast. I do want to touch on El Nino because this is going to be a huge piece of the puzzle for how strong this winter ultimately turns out to be. The plume of model guidance for the ocean temperatures in our key monitoring region is still pointing towards a strong El Nino event, and some of the more aggressive members of that plume are hinting at values that would put us into rare, possibly historic territory by the time we reach the peak of the event in the December through February window. Now, I want to be upfront that this is right at the edge of what we've documented before, so if the stronger end of that guidance verifies, we would genuinely be in somewhat uncharted territory for a lot of these regional impacts. On the other hand, when I look at the newest run of the climate forecast system, which has bounced around quite a bit over the past several weeks, it's coming in noticeably more conservative than the Euro. This latest run is suggesting we may only reach the lower end of strong El Nino territory rather than the more extreme values some of the other guidance has flirted with. I want to be honest with you that this particular model has flip-flopped before, so I wouldn't lock in on either the aggressive or the conservative scenario just yet, but the overall takeaway is still the same regardless of exactly how strong this event ends up being. We're dealing with a legitimate strong El Nino, and that has real implications for how active and how cold this pattern can get. So let's put some of this into a monthly breakdown so you can see exactly how I expect this to evolve. For the rest of this month, expect near to a little above average precipitation across the south and east with temperatures close to average, maybe trending a touch below average at times as these northern fronts sneak through. Moving into next month, that below average temperature signal becomes more consistent across the central and eastern US, with more frontal passages bringing noticeably cooler air behind them, along with periods of showers and a few afternoon storms. As we transition into the following month, this is where things really start to ramp up. The subtropical jet becomes fully established, which means more moisture streaming into the south and east, and at the same time, that northern trough continues to deepen. This combination raises the risk of some strong to potentially severe weather in the fall months across parts of the south, simply because you're getting warm, moist air colliding with these stronger cold fronts. But it also sets the table for what's coming as we transition from fall into the heart of winter, because that same setup, once temperatures drop enough, becomes your snow and ice producing machine. Heading into the core winter months, this is where the newest data is really turning heads. We're looking at the deepest below average pressure anomaly of the entire outlook centered right, across that south to east corridor, and pairing that with a below average temperature anomaly that's also at its strongest point during the same window. When you line up a strong storm track with a strong cold air supply at the same time, that's your classic recipe for significant winter weather events, including the potential for multiple accumulating snow and ice threats stretching from parts of the south through the Tennessee and Ohio valleys and up into the northeast. As we push through the heart of winter and into the following month, the guidance keeps this below average temperature and above average precipitation signal locked in, and it's really not until we approach the transition into spring that we start to see some very gradual moderation. Even then, the pattern doesn't just flip to warm and dry overnight. Instead, we're looking at a slow fade, where the cold and stormy signal weakens bit by bit, but there's still a real chance for some lingering wintry impacts even into the early parts of spring before this whole pattern finally relaxes. I also want to spend a moment on the temperature anomaly maps specifically, because I know a lot of you want to know just how cold we're talking about. As we move through the fall months, we're generally looking at anomalies that are a degree or two below average in Celsius across the central US, which might not sound like a lot, but remember, when you're talking about a seasonal average departure of even 1 full degree Celsius, that represents a meaningful and noticeable shift in your day-to-day weather, especially when it comes to how often you dip below freezing and how often precipitation falls as snow instead of rain. As we move deeper into winter, that anomaly strengthens further, and the newest data has that below average temperature core sliding a bit further south and east compared to earlier. Outlooks, which would put places across the south and even into the northeast into that colder than average bullseye, rather than just the traditional cold weather regions of the northern plains and upper Midwest. This is honestly one of the bigger changes I've seen in the guidance recently, and it's a big part of why I wanted to bring you this updated video today. Now, let's talk briefly about hurricane season, since we're still right in the middle of it. With a strong El Nino in place, the overall pattern tends to favor increased upper-level winds across the deep tropics, which typically suppresses development in that main development region off the coast of Africa. What we're seeing in the newest data continues to support that idea, with any areas of lift and potential development staying closer to home, generally near the Gulf and along the southeast coast, rather than out in the open Atlantic. I still believe if we do see any additional tropical development this season, it's more likely to be backloaded rather than happening right away. So this is something we'll continue to watch together as we move through the rest of the season. Let's shift gears now and talk about what you can expect right around the corner, since I know a lot of you also want the shorter range forecast before I let you go today. For today, temperatures are still running quite warm across a good chunk of the country, especially the south central region and the southwest, where afternoon highs are climbing well past 100 degrees, and out towards parts of the west coast, some spots could approach 115 this afternoon. Overnight tonight, most areas cool back down into the 50s and 60s, but that warmth tries to build right back in tomorrow. As we go through the next few days, you'll start to notice those overnight lows trending a bit cooler, especially in the mornings, as the first hints of that fall pattern we've been discussing start to nose their way into the picture. This won't be a dramatic, sudden change, but rather a gradual cooling trend that continues through the rest of the week. And I do think it's a preview of exactly the kind of pattern shift we've been talking about throughout this entire video, just on a much smaller day-to-day scale. I also want to address something a lot of you have been asking me about, which is how confident I actually am in a pattern like this holding together for several months out. I want to be honest with you. Seasonal outlooks are never a guarantee, and anybody who tells you they know exactly what's going to happen 5 or 6 months from now with total certainty isn't being fully honest with you. What I can tell you is that when multiple independent pieces of data, meaning our oscillation trends, our pressure and precipitation anomalies, and our major long-range models, all start lining up and agreeing with each other more than they were a few weeks ago, that gives me a lot more confidence in the overall direction of the pattern, even if the exact details of any single storm this far out are still impossible to pin down. That's really the difference between a seasonal outlook like this one and a short range forecast. I'm not trying to tell you that a specific city is going to get a specific amount of snow on a specific date in January. I'm overall trend, so you can go into fall and winter with a general sense of what to expect and how to prepare, whether that means getting your heating system checked, stocking up before the first cold snap hits, or just mentally preparing for a winter that's looking more active than the past couple of years. I also think it's worth mentioning that patterns like this one, where you get a strong ridge out towards Alaska paired with a deep trough across the central and eastern U.S., tend to be somewhat self-reinforcing once established. The cold air that builds up under that setup helps maintain the very temperature contrast that keeps the jet stream locked into that same general configuration. That's part of why, once these signals line up this early and this consistently, they often persist and even strengthen deeper into the season, which lines up with exactly what the newest data is showing us today. So, to wrap all of this together, the bottom line from today's update is that the newest data has strengthened both the cold and the snowy signal for this upcoming winter compared to where we were before. Our EPO and AO trends are supporting a stronger, more persistent ridge towards Alaska, with repeated cold intrusions diving down into the central and eastern U.S. Our pressure and precipitation trends are supporting an active, strengthening storm track running from the south up into the east, getting reinforced by a strong subtropical jet. And our El Nino signal, regardless of exactly how strong it ends up verifying, supports an active and impactful winter pattern overall. When you put all of these pieces together, that's exactly why this winter weather pattern just turned cold and snowy in the newest guidance, and why I wanted to get this update out to you as soon as I saw it. I'll continue to track this closely as we get more data in over the coming weeks, and I'll keep bringing you updates the moment anything meaningful changes, whether that's a strengthening of this signal or any kind of pullback. So make sure you're subscribed and you've got your notifications turned on so you don't miss anything as this story continues to develop heading into fall and winter. Thank you so much for watching today's forecast, and thank you so much for all the continued support and all the kind words. Before I let you go, I want to leave you with a quick word from our Father today. Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Amen. I appreciate every single one of you more than you know, and I always hope that above all things, all glory goes to God, our Father in heaven. I hope he keeps you and your families safe every single day. Have a truly blessed day out there, everybody, and I will see you in the next update.